So I thought I'd make a quick video about how to apply for a master's in the UK, because I remember when I was applying for my master's in my final year of uni, there was a lot of information available about undergrad, because everyone goes through the same process, but there's hardly any information available for postgrad. The first thing is that there is a big difference between applying for undergrad and your master's. When you apply for your undergrad through UCAS, as you might remember, you apply to all your universities, 5 choices, and you write one personal statement, and it doesn't have to be tailored to a particular university. But when you're applying for a master's, you're applying to a specific university directly, and so the personal statement that you write has to be suited to not just that course, but that course at that specific university. So the next thing that I'm going to talk about is how do you actually apply and when do you apply, talking from the point of view of someone who is doing their undergrad and wants to do a master's right after it. In the summer between their second and third year of university, it's a good time to start looking at the courses that you want to apply for and the universities that you want to apply for, and actually closer to the end of your summer holidays, just before you're going into your final year, write up at least a draft of your personal statement, if not complete it, because that will put you in a really good position to be able to then send off your application really quickly in about October or November time. And that's actually quite important because there are 2 basic ways that universities address admissions for masters. Either it's rolling basis or it's on the basis of a deadline. So some universities like Oxford have a deadline, which means that the applications close on 30th of January or something like that, and as long as you get your application in before the 30th of January, you'll be considered equally against all of the other applicants. Then you have some other universities like UCL or the London School of Economics, which are rolling basis, which essentially means that they will start to consider applications as they come in. It's almost kind of first come, first serve. So if they fill their applications, the number of spaces in February, then they'll close the application cycle in February. Generally speaking, if you're talking about a competitive course, most of those at competitive universities will start to get filled from January onwards, and that's why it's quite important to make sure that you sort out your personal statement before the start of your final year, and you contact your referees before the start of your final year so that they know that they have to write you a reference so that you can get your application in as soon as possible. The second thing with regards to how to apply is how many universities you can actually apply to. With undergrad, you had a maximum of 5. With a master's, or postgraduate qualifications generally, you can apply to as many as you want. If you're really dedicated, you can apply to like 30 different courses, but it's not practically viable to do that for 2 reasons. Firstly, your referees are not going to be prepared to write you a really large number of references. Generally speaking, they'll only be prepared to do 4 or 5, which is what I did. And the second thing is, going back to the personal statement, you have to apply as if you're applying for a specific course at a specific university, because you could have a course in a master's in biology at University A, and then you're also applying to a master's in biology at University B, but the actual modules covered in both of them are completely different, so you can't just use the same personal statement. The third thing with regards to how to apply is the application process itself. Generally speaking, you'll require a personal statement, you'll require a CV, you'll require 2 academic references, generally speaking, and that means they can't be from an employer, they have to be from someone who's taught you, and you sometimes need written work, a sample of an essay. I know that Oxford requires 3 academic references, and they require maybe 2 or 3 pieces of written work as well. With regards to referees, you want to pick someone who you know will give you a good reference, but is also going to be reliable. Generally speaking, you'll want to go to a person or a lecturer whose module you scored really high marks in, and then the other one can be your personal tutor who you might have met throughout the year and has more of a is more aware of your overall grades across all of your courses, and you can talk about them. So that puts you in a good position, because one of your referees is going to talk about how you did really well in his module, and then your personal tutor can talk about how you've done really well generally across all of your courses. Probably the most important part of your application, alongside your transcript that you have to attach with your grades on it, is your personal statement. And there isn't a definitive right way to write a personal statement, but I'll just tell you the kind of structure that I followed. You want to tell them, why do you want to study this subject, and why do you want to study at this particular university, and what makes you a good candidate. You'd want to outline at the beginning, why do you want to study the subject quite generally, possibly related to the university, but just establishing your interest in the subject. Then you want to go more into why do you want to study that subject, but at that particular university you could talk about the modules that you're going to be able to study, and then you can bring in things like I did a dissertation on this area in my undergrad and I want to explore it further in the masters, and that looks quite good because it shows them that you have experience in an area of study and you want to take your understanding of that a little bit further. I think that should be the main bulk of your personal statement, and then you should go into what skills make you good for it. So going forward you could talk about that you did particularly well in a module, you got a first in a module that is covered by the master's degree, or you could bring in the fact that you did work experience in an area that is very related to the degree itself. And then following on from that, you want to talk about what you want to do afterwards. You know, if you're doing a master's in politics, you want to go work for the United Nations or work in public policy research. And then finally, how long should a personal statement be? Generally speaking, about 1,000 words, so about 2 sides of A4. Although, definitely go on the website of the university that you're applying for, because oftentimes, more often than not, they'll give very specific guidance on what they are looking for in a personal statement. Perhaps the most important thing is how are you actually going to fund your master's degree. Up until very, very recently, there was basically no funding available at all. But now, people applying are a bit more fortunate in that they have access to the postgraduate loan from the UK government, which is £10,000 for the year, and you can use that on the cost of the fees or accommodation. So there are a couple of ways where you can get a scholarship. The first one is looking for external scholarships, sort of named scholarships, so you know, people giving awards to study sociology if you come from, you know, Asia and you're the first person in your family to go to university. The second way is sort of research councils and things like that, who would be looking to fund people doing their master's degrees. Most of the time that kind of funding is reserved for people doing PhDs. The third way you could get a kind of scholarship or an award is from the university itself. So I know that unis like Oxford, LSE run very generous scholarship schemes themselves. And that's a basic overview of how to apply for a UK master's programme.